Lubitz here.
Carolyn,
Carolyn Coffey.
And here,
Mark,
Mark Cameron here.
Wayne,
Wayne Sawchuck here.
Tucker,
Tucker Meehan here.
Sam.
Sam Wakeman here.
Thank you all for coming. Michelle, did you want to continue from there?
So Phil, thank you. I think I wanted to reiterate much of what you just said. We are going to be taking questions through the Q&A. One important thing is that we would like for you to make sure you have your full name and address when asking a question, and we can address it properly. We want to also let you know that if there are a series of questions that are answered, and they're along the lines of the same topic, we will answer them all as one. If you feel as though your question was not answered, please let us know and we'll make sure to follow up with that. So thank you for attending tonight.
Okay, we have Garrett and Mark that have a presentation to make. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, welcome. Thank you for joining. As you can see, this is a slide here that's showing the rendering of what we've come up with for a renovation of the old existing town hall and a new addition to adjoin that town hall. Jason? Jason, can you, next one. The members are led by Phil Lear, the chair, Wayne Sawchuck as vice chair, and committee members Carolyn Coffey, Sam Wakeman, Tucker Meehan, Josiah Stevens, Garrett Lubitz, and myself, Mark Cameron. As part of this project, we looked at five key components. First is the structure. We have a deteriorating structure, both in the new and the old buildings. Both have issues due to their age, as well as water infiltration. Space, the use of space of the existing building has inefficiencies. The MEP fire protection systems many of which are at the end of their usable lifespan. Lack of a fully accessible building. There's several areas of the building which are not handicap accessible. And postponed projects, many of which have been based on versions of this project taking off over the last several years, including roof repairs that have been postponed due to an anticipation of a larger scale project. Jason? The first three items here on the project priorities were a charge of the Board of Select. The town hall is to remain on the common and fit with the architecture of the area. We retain the historic structure and renovate the historic structure and provide ample meeting space for town boards and committees. Part of our design included easy access for the public-facing town offices, an energy and efficient green constructed building, and a building that is code compliant, both in fire and safety and accessibility. We also designed a space that was flexible and efficient and allowed for change and growth over the years to come. Jason? Here you can see the first floor plan, which I know is hard to make out on this platform, but I can just highlight some of the key components of this design. Start with the Old Town Hall. The first floor of Old Town Hall will remain as an auditorium space for civic use. We've added 6 bathrooms to the front entrance side of the building, which would be available for use both during normal business hours and off hours. for the town and accessible for functions on the town common, such as the skating pond, Strawberry Festival, Farmers Market, and things of that nature. The new addition first floor would contain the treasurer collector, the town clerk, the building department, and a small conference room. Many of these functions are the functions that the public comes in to use the town hall for. We thought it was important to have these functions on the first floor where it was easy access. The entrance to the building would be on the side where it's currently in the front, and it would be a single point of access for both those with accessibility challenges and not. The second floor of Old Town Hall would include the IT department, the assessor, accounting, HR, 143 TV, one toilet room, which currently Old Town Hall has nothing on the second floor, and a staff lunchroom. The second floor of the new addition would contain the office of the town manager, engineering, utilities, and the DPW. It would have 2 meeting rooms and 2 toilet rooms. The basement of Old Town Hall would remain similar to its existing condition. But the height in Old Town Hall is not that of something that is usable for function other than some storage and some mechanical utilities. The new addition would contain a flex space, some mechanicals, safe harbor, file storage, and the vault. We also did add a second fully accessible stair so that flex room could be used for any training room needs. I'll let Garrett take this one.
All right, off mute now. Good evening. My name is Garrett Lubitz. I am a member of the Town Hall Building Committee. So I'm just going to walk us through the site plan as it's been designed. So a couple of things that just wanted to note here, because we've seen some questions that have arisen about sort of the way the building is sited. So the first is that, when you look at this structure, the old town hall structure in the new plans exists exactly as it does today. The new rebuilt annex to the town hall is actually, it's not on the, it's in a very similar position, but the front of the building actually sticks out further. The main entrance has been shifted over to the side to face the parking lot, as Jason had indicated. But the general layout of sort of the buildings with the annex on the side is remarkably similar to what you would envision today. However, the surroundings have changed significantly in that we are attempting to bring in a lot more green space around the town hall. So with the prioritization of green space, it obviously raises some concerns about what's going to happen with parking. And given parking can be scarce along the common, we do want to point out that the number of parking spots in the current drafts that we have are actually the same number of parking spots that we have today. So there is no net change to the number of parking spaces available at the town hall building. We've also thought about usability for this space, the outdoor space, by trying to create larger contiguous green spaces and even little minor convenience things like a tax drop-off box within the parking lot area, so people could just drive around and drop their taxes off without even getting out of their car. Next slide, Jason. So we'll zoom in a little bit closer on the building itself. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see where the old town hall is and the new town hall building that we're discussing. So one of the things that we carefully considered was to look at the site and try to make it as accessible as possible, and both for, as Jason said, for people who have accessibility difficulties and for people who are able-bodied. And we, one of the things that we really prioritized doing was creating low-grade ramps throughout the space. So one of the things that does is it makes it easier for people to go up and down the slopes, and it also eliminates the need to have handrails around the outside of the building, and enables us to preserve some of the historic features and the look of the building. There are walkways that go around the building, so it's easy to walk the exterior. The sidewalks are connected to the walkways that we have, so it's easy to park in front of the town hall and still, if you wanted to park on Highland Avenue, you could easily get from the parking there up onto the sidewalk and then go right into either the old town hall or go around to the new town hall structure. There are handicap parking spaces on the side of the building as well. And, as I mentioned earlier, with the enhanced green space around the outside, I think this gives us much more usable space than we currently have, where sort of is chopped up with the parking island and the island as you enter the parking area to the town hall. So next slide, please. This is obviously the biggest question that has been raised today is, what is this all going to cost? So I think before we get into the cost, I mean, the numbers are there, you can see them, but it's important to sort of talk through how we got to where we are today. So when we started this project, we were tasked with examining two options. One was renovating the existing structure, meaning both the old town hall and the existing annex, and also looking at what it would cost to rebuild the annex while also renovating the old town hall. So when we started to look at the renovation to the existing structure, the cost quickly escalated. There are a couple of things that are really important to think about as we talk about what those renovation costs entail. But the bottom line number is that it's going to cost us around $10 million to just renovate the existing structures and wind up with a building that looks very similar to what we have today, both on the inside and outside. There are a couple of issues that would also prevent us from doing more piecemeal approaches, such as some of the code issues that Jason had mentioned earlier. When a project goes above 30% of the assessed value, it triggers issues with bringing all of the structure up to existing code. So doing sort of a staggered approach and piecemeal additions is something that really is not possible, because as soon as you start to do any of the bigger projects, you essentially wind up having to do the entire project. So that puts us at about a $10 million figure. $9.7 million is sort of our best estimate. As I noted earlier, though, that still leaves us with a building that doesn't fit in with the town common, the aesthetics there. It doesn't address things like meeting spaces. It doesn't address the current programming needs, and it doesn't give us a space that's designed to be forward flexible as well. So it really, when we looked at this project, it just didn't seem like spending $10 million on a building that really doesn't meet our needs today or tomorrow wasn't the best path forward. So we started then to look at what a rebuild would do. And you'll see that there are a couple of numbers, that we've got floated there to sort of peg a target. Part of this is because it's not certain right now, all of the different features that we're looking at. We're looking at different HVAC systems, investigating geothermal, different things that would impact the bottom line. We also, have been very mindful of trying to keep the cost as low as possible, while also meeting the needs of the community. So we've looked at lots of different iterations for the design layout. We have tried to keep the footprint as functional and efficient as possible. As you can see, we've looked at 3 different options is at the bottom there, those 3 different bullets: shrinking the footprint, reusing the existing foundation, utilizing the basement and the attic spaces to the extent possible. When we looked at those options, they really didn't move the needle in terms of the project cost. Shockingly, I think for all of us, we expected that maybe there would be some real benefit to trying to use the existing foundation of the annex, and that just didn't turn out to be the case. Similarly, shrinking the footprint, unless we were going to be able to just off-site entire departments, we really weren't able to get to any sort of meaningful shrinking of the footprint while still meeting the needs of the town. So next slide. All right, so looking at those numbers, about $14 million, give or take $500,000. We've been working very closely with the select board, the advisory board, and the capital budget committee to figure out a way that we can fit this project into our 10-year capital plan. So the goal of this project is to be able to undertake it without any new taxes being assessed on the community. Now, that's, I'm not a financial expert. I can't make the statements that that's the case, but we are working to do our best on that. And, the project has been, proceeding on that basis. And I think that based off of, the commitments that we've received from various committees outside of the town hall building committee itself, people who, look at the numbers a little bit more closely and understand the town finances, we think that this is something that's doable. There are also Community Preservation Act funds that are available, potentially up to $4 million. We're looking into those possibilities and working with CDC to see what we can get. We're also going to be investigating grant funding opportunities upon approval of the project. There are different incentives available for under the Mass Green Communities and energy rebate programs. There also are potentially funds available for COVID relief funding, that there are some bills that are pending in front of Governor Baker, and we will obviously be doing our best to make sure that we can reduce the cost to the community as much as possible. Next slide. Jason, you're on mute. Or Mark, sorry.
So sorry. So here's the ask. We're looking for the town to approve $750,000, which includes 1 geothermal test well, to continue the design process of design development and construction documents. The Board of Select has unanimously voted 5-0 in favor of this. Advisory has voted 6-2 in favor of this. And the Capital Budget Committee has voted unanimously 5-0 in favor of this. So following that, $750,000 would be a request for the total funding project at a later date, which was estimated to be around another 12.75 to 13.75 million. And just, I know people have seen a number a little bit higher than that, and that's because the 750 was included in those numbers that we published as part of the project cost. But just to be clear, the 750 now plus the 12.5 to 13.5-ish later. So that's the recommendation of this committee based on all of our work. And if folks have any questions, we're looking forward to answering them. And
Thank you. Great job. Michelle, do you have some stuff?
So we do have a question. It's from Carrie Thompson. And she says, thank you for all you're doing and have done as a committee. And she's here to support, and she wants to ask how that they can be of the biggest help leading up to town meeting. And also, she says it feels as if people are worried about town facilities overall and how the town hall plays into the broader goals for the town in the future. she's looking for advice to everyone on this committee about how we can thread this needle of fighting this project while explaining to the citizens that this will not hurt the potential for other projects in the future, especially things related to the schools. So Carolyn was kind enough to respond to that. And Carolyn, I don't know if you verbally just want to go through your response.
Sure. Thanks, Carrie. Thank you for all your support. Thank you, Diane, and all of the select board members. I do think that that's an important thing. And what I wrote was that I think if you guys can help people understand that two things. One, we have to invest in this building one way or the other. And either we're going to make a $10 million investment in the building and not have exactly what we want, or we're going to spend a little bit more and hopefully get a flexible, efficient building that looks nice and meets all of our needs in terms of meeting room space and bathroom space and accessibility and everything that we need. And it's going to set us up for decades to come. The incremental $4 million should not have a monumental effect on the financing needs of the town. It is a lot of money, but for these big projects, they are likely to require excluded debt. And if the voters want them, the town has plenty of borrowing capacity to do that and still maintain our AAA rating. So I just wanted to, if you guys, if committees are put together and the town decides it wants investments in the schools or investments in public safety, there is the ability to still do that and do this project. So if you can help people understand that, I think it's better coming from the select board than from the town hall building committee, because it might seem like we have a personal interest in it, which is not the case. We, just like everyone else, want what's best for the town.
Thanks, Carolyn. We also have another question. There's Jackie Dormitzer has a question. Her hand is raised. I don't see anything typed. Is it okay if I allow her to speak her question?
Sure.
I think Jackie has fallen off. Okay.
Put her on.
She's no longer there.
Oh,
She's in the, she looks like she's still participating.
Oh,
I wanted to make a further comment on Carolyn and what she had outlined. We in the next 3 to 4 years, we will have a significant amount of debt roll-off for projects in the past that we have bonded. And that's going to open up the town's capability to take on more debt for future projects. Also, from a school standpoint, it has traditionally been very simple and easy to finance schools with excluded debt. And we will have a significant amount of excluded debt coming off the rolls in the next 3 to 4 years. So from that standpoint and looking into the future on things that you might want to do, we should have the ability within our operating budget to take these things on.
excellent, Sam. So Jackie does have a question.
Excuse me, Michelle. Diane, did you want to say something?
I wanted to just jump on what Sam said with an exclamation point, and also Carolyn's earlier comment. And I also think it's really important because while I'm happy as a select board member to take this to the streets, I think it's really all of our work to reach out to the community to sell things, because, you know, some would argue that the select board members have more at stake in this project than the town building committee. So I really think it's all of us to bring whatever, you know, I hate to use the word advocacy, but we really need to promote this building. I noticed that David Frog is one of the participants today, and David was chair of, and I probably have the years wrong, but of the town hall building committee or pre-2011. And also again in 2014. This is a need that the town identified over a decade ago. And as Carolyn articulated really well, you know, we have to do something about this building. It doesn't meet code. That electrical photograph that you showed, I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight. We have a responsibility to maintain our buildings. And again, this has been an issue for 10 plus years. And so I do think it's all of our responsibilities to get out and, you know, call your friends and let them know that this is a project that has been, if anything, well vetted. And, you know, in the finance team and capital budget and advisory have worked this every single way that we can to make sure that it fits within our current operating budget and doesn't squeeze out projects that are going to be needed in the future. So thanks.
Thank you.
Can I jump in as well?
Sure.
One thing I also wanted to add to Carrie and on to what everyone has said, because I agree with everything. But one thing that I think is also important when talking to people about the project in general is talking about the look and feel of the common. It's a historic district. It's really important to the identity and the pride we have as a town. And I think no matter what we do, obviously we need to fix the building, but it would be really nice if the building that was attached to our 1857 structure sold the town and people were really excited to drive through and see it, and not to drive through and have many people feel like it's one of the least good, if not the least attractive building on the common. It would be much nicer if it was an asset that complemented the really impressive structure we have from the 1850s.
Thank you.
And just to
Go ahead,
add,
Mark.
if I could add something, you know, I hear a lot about the schools, and you know, I don't think there's any formal asks from the schools at this point. I think there's been talk, and there's been a committee that's looking to be assembled there, and I don't think it needs to be looked at as a situation of this or that. I think the time for this is just further ahead than the schools right now, and I think that this is very important. And the further we push this down the road, it's going to make it harder and harder for the town to do all these things simultaneously, just from a capacity of not even just financially, just with all these capital improvement projects. So I think it's important to move this along and also address the schools. But it's not a situation where it needs to be one or the other.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this topic before we move? Thanks. Michelle?
Yep, so we have a couple of questions. Jackie does have a question, and Mr. Frog has a question as well. So I'm going to allow Jackie to ask her question.
Okay, can you hear us?
We can.
Okay, it's Ralph. Okay, it's Ralph asked the question. It's Jackie's PC. Okay, I want to echo a couple of things that Sam and others have said, but I want to emphasize that although this project is going forward based on the capital budget voted based on the fact that it would be consistent with the 10-year capital plan, which is what the selectmen have endorsed twice, but there's no quantitative numbers whatsoever at this point that includes the $3.5 to $5 million per year that we're needing to spend going forward over the next 10 years on other projects. So as I look at it, this has not yet been sorted out in terms of cost. So number one, that's critical. And there was an expectation it would be somewhat figured out with regard to the consistency with the 10-year capital plan. I have a number of questions with regard to the building itself. I don't disagree that I like the building broadly. I do think the entry is not particularly attractive in the sense that when you come into the building, You have no shelter or very little shelter, as it turns out, and immediately you enter a corridor of about 15 feet with walls and doors on both sides. Most buildings, which are public buildings, as I understand them, for example, Wilcott Commons is a good example, or the library, you get a sense of openness immediately as you walk in. This one does not. You don't get openness until you've gone 15 feet through walls, okay? That doesn't, through a corridor. It doesn't sound so terrific. Many of us have actually worked, for the most part, as capital budget in the basement of the current building where there was light coming in. I believe, as I understand it, you have not allowed for any light to come into the basement, and I understand why you haven't, but in fact, in the long term, that is probably not a good idea, as the basement may turn out to be a very useful asset to this building, and that should be reconsidered. Third thing, most of us who have been using this building over the past 60 years approximately, at least all the buildings, have felt that you could walk into the building in a cold, snowy night and get immediately into a doorway close to the parking lot. That doorway doesn't exist now, so we have to come more or less toward the front door with a little side entrance. That's not all that attractive and probably is less desirable than it has been in the past. The treasurer collector, it is peculiar that we're continuing to insist that that should be on the first floor, in that most of us either use the drop box, which I appreciate you're maintaining, but also the drop box is not, it is the major way, along with either using your bank and or checks to actually pay the treasurer or pay your tax. There's does not seem to be any logic not to open up the first floor a bit more, because the treasurer collector's function is generally not a public function. There are some, clearly, but not many people who actually pay their bills by walking in and dropping them there when there's a drop box outside. A few other minor comments. I'm sorry to be so thorough, so complete, but part of my problem with this is that there has not been another public meeting and therefore no opportunity to actually do things other than Facebook, which we don't use. Anyway, you've got a 150,000 kilowatt generator. It seems excessive in terms of a generator size. We've got $50,000 for a well, and yet we haven't even done a cost benefit on geothermal yet. Seems to me you ought to do a cost benefit first. I guess the last thing is, I understand the need for beauty in the lawn and all of that, but all of you know, or perhaps you haven't paid enough attention, the town common is a disgrace. It is mostly weeds and mud. And quite frankly, adding more green space in that area, if it is not maintained, will be a detriment, not a positive. So I am sorry to be so critical of this. I am not denying that this project ought to go forward. I'm saying there ought to be some real thinking about those kinds of ideas. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ralph. We do have another question instead of comments from Mr. Frog, and I'm going to allow him to speak next.
Dave, are you there?
I see him. Oh, here he is.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry, we're having some technical issues here. Well, I put in my question via the chat. I saw the designs, and I think it's been refined, and it's really excellent. And I thank everybody for all the work that they've done. I was actually on the first committee back in about 2007, and the one after that. So it's been over 14 years since this started, and I think everything you've done has been tremendous. The question I had was on the first and second floor. Is there the opportunity that in the future, 10 or 20 years down the line, if this gets built, that the walls are collapsible so that space could be reconfigured in the future for future needs of the town when it's built? And that's on the annex part, not the old town hall, but the new one that would be built.
Sure. Stay on, Dave. Mark,
Yep.
You want to respond to that?
Yes, Dave. The new building would be constructed of structural steel, metal decking, and the interior partitions would be just strictly demisable partitions for layout, and would be able to be reconfigured in the coming years or as needs may change. That was an important part of the design, which the current design does not allow us to do. The current annex, it has a lot of wood frame structural walls, which are really cost prohibitive to move around freely. So this design would allow that. Obviously, components like stairs would be a little bit more locked in, as well as the vault is a little bit more rigid in its locations.
Terrific. And I just had two other quick points. I know it's been brought up regarding the schools, and I know they're not asking for these type of capital needs right now, but when this started way back when, the schools were only 8 years out from the construction of what is called the new Osgood School now, and it's just called the Osgood School, and the resizing of both the Deer Hill and the high school. And I look back in one of my old town meeting books, as far as what the cost was, and from the town's portion, not because the state obviously paid some too at the time. I think it was a 50-50 split. The town's portion was between the two was over 26 million at the time that was bonded. It was 10 million for I believe the Osgood, and it was 60 million for the Deer Hill and the high school. So those capital needs were met at the time. If you remember, it was actually a meeting at the Music Circus at the time, which helped pass those. So I think one of the things going forward is beyond some school needs that are being brought up in the community, and it might be more noise than actual person to person. The other thing is the price tag. I know that all through the years, one of the problems has been people can't get around the price tag. I don't know what is an acceptable price, but it seems that has always been a trouble, whether it was 10 million, 12 million, 14 million, that people couldn't get around it. I think if it's brought up that we had already paid for schools that were a $10 million project, a $16 million project, and it was really double that, and we've already been paying that now for the 20, 30, or 20 plus years, I think it would let people know that Cohasset has done this type of construction before, and also had those price tags, and that was back in 1998 money, not in 2021 money. So, and then finally, as far as going forward, if it is to be constructed and people do pass it, I think one of the things that's different from 1987 is that we also have a facilities department now, which would help protect that investment and make sure that things are properly maintained, which before maintenance was spread out throughout the town. And it was, the schools did theirs, DPW did theirs, and it was all sort of, there was various ups and downs with that. So I think now when there are problems, we have a proper facilities department that can take care of things and take care of the new infrastructure that's put in by the town. So those are 3 points. And again, I thank you very much. And we'll be looking forward to seeing this at town meeting.
Thank you very much, David, for coming.
We do have another question.
Carolyn, did you have?
Hold on. Well, someone has to answer David's question about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did somebody answer the question about the walls moving
Yes.
already? Okay, sorry.
No problem. Any other comments on David's?
No, well, David, you make a really good point about the facilities department. Thank you for that. And the other thing we have now that I don't believe we had back then is an owner's project manager that makes sure that the construction is according to the specifications that are outlined by the architect, and therefore, hopefully, the annex is a much better constructed building than what we unfortunately ended up with last time, where we didn't have flashing and we didn't have sills. And so water was able to get in and do a lot of damage. So thank you for making your comments and for coming.
Thanks. Michelle, do we have something more?
We do. We have another question from Adam Aman. He's asking if we can discuss the process of selecting the contractor and/or architect of choice, is his first question. His second question is it possible to receive an itemized cost breakdown to fully understand the 10 million or 14 million? Also, energy efficiency improvements were mentioned. Have these annual savings been quantified?
Okay, there's a couple different questions there. Someone want to take one of those on?
Do you want me to, Phil, this is John. Do you want me to speak to the architect and the contractor question?
John, that'd be great. John is our project manager.
Hi, John Lemieux from Vertex. We're the owner's project manager for the town. So I'll go with the architect first. The architect for the project was chosen through a qualifications-based process. That architect for the project is Johnson Roberts Associates. The building committee went through the process of soliciting for architects, received qualifications packages from interested firms. It was looked at their project history, type of projects they've done, experience with town halls, all of that. And Johnson Roberts was the ultimate decision and is responsible for the designs that you saw as part of Mark's presentation today. As far as the contractor goes, given the value of this project, approaching the $10 million mark for construction, given the fact that it's historical renovation, we have the ability to do what's called pre-qualify. If the project goes over 10 million, we have to pre-qualify according to the state. But under 10 million, we have the ability to still pre-qualify. There is a classification of contractors certified by DCAM, Department of Capital Asset Management for the state. Again, all public work contractors have to have that certification, but there's a subgroup, historic renovation contractors, which we have done on prior projects as well. A job in Marshfield, a historic town hall in Chelmsford as well. Meaning you have the ability to look at a subset of that GC list. But at the end of the day, the general contractors are all certified by DCAM. We have the ability to pre-qual to kind of go through and vet them from that standpoint. And from that qualified pool, a contractor is selected as the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. But again, that's long after the design process that we're talking about today is completed.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Did we cover that? Both questions? I think we did.
So the second question is about the cost breakdown of the project, 10 million versus 14 million. Also the energy efficiency improvements, and if there's any quantified savings.
Anybody?
Well, we have some very, very rough estimates of the different costs. To look at those in detail, I mean, they're mostly a square footage estimate, say $200, $300, $400 a square foot times the number of square feet. It's not a detailed cost breakdown, and we won't get that detailed cost breakdown until we actually go out to bid. I don't know if that helps, and I don't know if these can be made available on the town website or not. I know some of them are on what we call OneDrive, but that has limited access. But it might be something you could put up on the town website.
John, did you want to?
Yeah, sure. So as far as cost goes, again, so folks understand, we are about 10% of the way through the design process of the project. And that's the reason for the ask here, to help get us through the next, 40, 50, 60, 70% to get us to, ultimately construction documents that can go out and be bid. So that being said, the cost estimate that was put together to drive the $14 million number is really a schematic estimate. It's very high level, say call it 30,000 feet. As the design process continues, there will be, through design development, there will be another cost estimate. And then as we get into construction documents, there'll be yet another cost estimate. So at this stage, to Sam's point, we're talking about a square footage program multiplied by some square foot costs. There are contingencies in those line items. And ultimately then we, take that construction number and also figure into that all of the soft costs, meaning the cost for the designer, cost for the owner's project management firm, cost for furniture, fixture, equipment, IT, bidding, advertising, kind of all of those things. So that we do have a breakdown of costs for that, but it's about a page at this point. As the process continues, that construction number, the big number that drives the overall total project budget, that gets more and more detailed. As the design develops, the cost estimates are more detailed as well. So as of right now, the cost estimator is basing their cost estimate on what's probably 5 to 10 sheets of drawings. And then as the design is, as it progresses, there's more details there for the estimators to bite into and understand, total numbers of fixtures, square foot of windows, what kind of siding, what kind of roofing. Everything right now is at that high level with a rough idea of what it's going to be, but not the specifics. So as we get closer, there's more, and we can certainly provide that breakdown of what's in that $14 million number for folks who would like to see it.
Great, thank you. Anybody else need a comment on that? That was very thorough. Michelle, do we have anything more? Excuse me.
We don't. There are no more questions that I see, unless anyone else wants to raise their hand and ask.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead, sure.
Yeah, just to help address some of Ralph Normanser's concerns, and and as to just trying to remember what each one of them were, but one of them being the entrance, and the entrances that we have now, we have an entrance off of the back, which is an entrance that's closest to the parking lot, and then we have the main entrance, which is off of the front side of the building, which is considered the accessible entrance. And part of where the accessibility, just to speak to why that is that, and that was done very deliberately, is part of the accessibility of a building is to not single out as much as possible those with disabilities and handicaps. So the current setup that we have allows for people without disabilities to enter into the entrance on the back side of the building, whereas the people that do have disabilities have to go around to the front and use a separate entrance. So the current design that we have provides a single point of entrance for every individual, whether you have disabilities or without disabilities. So that's some of the thought process there. In terms of the geothermal, we really need to gather, part of the $750,000 ask is to drill one well to be able to give the data to the engineers to understand what kind of cost savings this is for us, to understand what kind of earth we have to drill into, what the drilling is going to cost, and what kind of benefit we're going to get out of the earth that we have down there. So without that data, we really can't accurately answer that information. We can speculate, we can assume based on other conditions in the vicinities in this type of region, but really without that data, we're sort of flying blind. So those are two things that I just wanted to address that Ralph brought up. And I'm not sure if there were any others there that I'm trying to remember what else Ralph specifically had their concerns with pertaining to the building. The entrance is, there's.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you wanted, you're on a pretty good roll right there. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the process we went through in moving the treasurer off the first floor and trying to move the meeting room to the basement. That we spent quite a bit of time studying if we could reduce the footprint of the whole thing.
We did, and we went through an exercise to to add natural light into the basement. And, you know, the natural light came at a cost. It added area wells, it added ways to get light down in there, which added different components, additional foundations, modified how much retaining walls we needed, and it added some cost, and the benefit was marginal at best. It wasn't facing a good direction to get a lot of light. It was going to be limited in the basement in its positioning, and it was going to visually take away from the aesthetic appeal on the outside of the structure. So, and it really wasn't fit to put any particular one group down there. We as a committee determined and voted that it was best to have that flex room there that was available. And there's other ways that lighting could be addressed. There's circadian lighting, which can adjust based on the time of day outside, so that it doesn't feel like a basement. And that's done even in hospitals. There's hospitals that use that kind of lighting system. So that's what we looked at in terms of the entrance and the vestibule. It's really the first time we've heard of that. I mean, we certainly have a vestibule, a double set of doors there to help limit the air infiltration and loss of heat and air conditioning through a set of double doors. But, you know, it was the first time we heard of a long corridor there. I mean, and just looking at it now and looking at the plan, there's adjustments that could be made. It's not out of the question. But, you know, I don't see it as a long corridor, but if that's a concern, I mean, it certainly could be potentially looked at and addressed.
Great, thank you very much. Wayne, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
I have a couple of comments, and I think we really want to look at maybe going back in the tape and getting all of, or just ask Ralph for his whole list, because I think some things aren't so set in stone that what you see right now is exactly what is going to be in the final drawings. I have one thought that's been coming up to me lately more and more. That is, can the handicapped accessibility really be in the front where both ramps are at ground level, and you can go into one entrance in that direction and the other entrance into the main town hall from the same starting point, rather than necessarily making a handicapped person park all the way in the back of the building when they want to go into the front of the building, and then have to go up a ramp, down a ramp, up a ramp, to go like in that fashion. So, you know, that something like that is something that we might look at going forward and say, hey, really the handicap spaces should be out here on the street and not necessarily in the back of the building.
Carolyn.
Wayne, there are 3 handicap spaces in front of the building. Now, the way the sidewalk was set up, there's no curb in front of that beautiful flowering tree.
On Highland
that
Ave.
was, on Highland Avenue, which was done on purpose to make the parking spaces level, and presumably there will be a way for anyone parking there to be able to get up on the ramps from the front as well.
Right, but the plan today is for the sidewalk that I'm going to call that sidewalk that goes between the buildings to be on that property, and there is nothing in the plan that shows that there would be handicapped spaces and an entrance to get on to those spaces. In other words, it's something that we probably 99% are going to do, but it's not something that we're showing now,
Okay.
or that people can see. You know what I mean? So I think you know, that from Highland Ave in should be shown on the plan, not from 10 feet inside to show on the plan. Because when I was looking at the plan earlier today, I was seeing that the apron that comes out doesn't seem like it goes out far enough to hit Highland Avenue, rather than maybe the back of the sidewalk. So I'm just, you know, so I just think that that's a detail that sort of has to be firmed up a little bit. And then the thought is still there that are the spaces in the back of the building as important as the spaces in the front of the building? And as was just said, you want to make it so that people are going in the same way, meaning you're making it so that the people going can use either the ramp or the stairs that are able to, in literally going into the same part of the building. Anyway, so, but I think the concerns that he brought up today are going to be concerns that he's going to bring up and others may bring up before town meeting. So we you know, and I think I'm a little afraid with some of what John said in terms of we can't go into town meeting saying we think this is going to be the number. We have to sort of have more basis that we can get this done for the $14 million, and everything we want is going to be somehow included. Everything that we say we're going to put in. Am I wrong with that?
Yep. No, thank you, Wayne. We're sort of running out of time here. There's a couple other people I wanted to ask while we were here. Mary, did you want to say anything while you're here?
You already stated in your presentation that advisory voted 6-2 for the project. The two individuals were not opposed to the project. I think they just wanted to see some firmer numbers. So that's what that was about. You know, I so appreciate all the work that the committee has done. Town Hall Redux number 4, I guess, but it is a beautiful building. Lots of considerations, great modifications, given that all this happened during COVID, and excited.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Brian, did you want to say anything while you're here?
I would just address, there was one question about whether or not there had been any cost benefit analysis on the energy systems. It came from Ralph with regards to geothermal. It also came from another participant earlier in the conversation. And in fact, the engineering firm that's been retained for the systems on this has done cost benefit analysis. And the numbers show sort of very clear distinctions between the 3 different energy design alternatives. The most basic, obviously, being a natural gas-fired boiler with a traditional air conditioning chiller system, effectively 2 separate systems, being the most expensive to run longer term. The nat gas side of it's the heat side of it's fairly efficient, but the cooling is extremely expensive to run in that configuration. And then, the next step up requires a little bit more capital investment, but has a very short, several year return on capital. And that is to go with air source heat pumps. And then there's a question about the geothermal, because it does have the highest upfront costs, but there's several moving pieces, one of which is the geology. And that's why we have to drill the test well. Because we have to figure out exactly how deep and how many wells in order to get the heat load that the building requires. And depending on where those numbers come out, geothermal will either make sense or it won't. If the numbers aren't absolutely clear that the investment is justified and promptly repays itself over a fairly short time frame, we won't do the geothermal. It's not a religious issue. It's just cold hard cash, and the math will give us the answer. So that's all I'd add.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Don, did you want to say anything while you're here?
I don't have anything additional to add. I honestly came on a little late from another meeting, so I was just here to answer any questions if there were any finance related. Apologize, I wasn't prepared to present anything, so I was just more here to answer any questions as needed.
Sure, I appreciate that. Obviously the big question here is the cost and how we pay for it. We talked a little bit about it. I don't know if you want to address that just in a 2-minute blurb or not.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we all know that there's no hard way of coming up with this right this second. We have some examples on how we can make it work without having to do a debt exclusion and really not to affect the capital stabilization and the capital funding. Again, we internally ran through some numbers. We initially used, the 13.5 figure. I know that we talked 14.5. Looking at the 13.5, I mean, if CPC recommits the 4 million, and we also have some offsets, some grant funding that we have opportunities for energy efficiency projects, using some free cash reserves to put aside to help pay down some project costs before we actually borrow. And then also utilizing some of the ARPA funding that we are hoping to receive in the near future, repurposing some capital that was already approved through capital stabilization and really freeing up that money and just funding a couple of those projects through ARPA, brings the amount that we need to borrow down to closer to about 7.2 million. Again, just based on some rough numbers that we were looking at internally. And when you break that down over 30 years, it's somewhere in the range of 400,000 a year. And over a 2-3 year period, by the time we're finally done with the project, have all our borrowing done, I really think that we can fit this into our budget over the next few years. And again, do we have a set today how that can actually happen? No. Do we have some ideas that we can do? Absolutely. And it might be a year or two tightening the belt a bit, but I definitely think with the game plan that we have, we can make it happen without an exclusion, without significant impact on the capital stabilization and capital plan.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I don't see anything else. It is after 8 o'clock now. We were going to stop at 8, but just like our town hall building committee meetings, they never seem to end. But great information, good forum tonight. Thank you for sharing. We do want to remind people that our town hall building committee meetings, which are every Tuesday night now and have been for the past 2 months, is a public meeting and can be watched. And also can go back and watch the recordings of those too to get information. And we always welcome input too. This is a community building. We have not built this as a group. We've built this from a lot of input from different sources. So we continue to do that, and it will continue to evolve into the best building it can possibly be for the community. So with that, we want to thank you very much for coming tonight and helping out with the presentation, and hope there's some people that have gained some insight from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.